The sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Willow Creek, Colorado, as Hannah Crawford clutched her children's hands tightly, her heart heavy with the weight of rejection. The year was 1879, and she had traveled over 300 miles with her 3 young sons after her husband's death, only to be turned away by her late husband's brother with cruel words that still echoed in her mind. "We don't have room for a woman with 3 mouths to feed," he had said, not even inviting them inside despite the journey they had made. Thomas made his choice when he left to seek his fortune. His debts aren't our burden. Now Hannah stood in the center of a town she didn't know, with only $20 to her name and 3 exhausted boys looking to her for answers she didn't have. 8-year-old James, 6-year-old Samuel, and 4-year-old William stared up at her with tired eyes, their clothes dusty from travel, their stomachs empty since morning. "Mama, where will we sleep tonight?" James asked, his voice small but determined to be brave. Hannah swallowed the lump in her throat. "We'll find a place, darling. God provides for those in need." But as she looked around at the unfamiliar faces passing by, none meeting her eyes, her faith wavered. She had sold nearly everything to make this journey, believing family would welcome them. Now, as the afternoon waned, she felt more alone than the day she had buried her husband. The stagecoach that had brought them to Willow Creek had already departed. Hannah guided her boys to a wooden bench outside the general store, instructing them to sit while she gathered her thoughts. She smoothed her travel-worn dress, adjusted her bonnet, and tried to appear more composed than she felt. "You folks look like you could use some help," a deep voice said from behind her. Hannah turned to find a tall man in a worn leather vest and dusty hat watching her with concerned eyes. His face was tanned from years under the sun, with lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but something about his steady gaze made Hannah's racing heart calm slightly. "We're just resting a moment," she replied, straightening her spine. Pride was one of the few possessions she had left. "The boys and I have had a long journey." The man nodded, his eyes taking in the 3 tired children and their single carpet bag. "Name's Dawson Baxter," he said, tipping his hat. "I run the Circle B ranch outside of town." "Hannah Crawford," she responded with a small nod. "These are my sons, James, Samuel, and William." Dawson crouched down to the children's level. "That's quite a journey for such young cowboys." His smile revealed a small gap between his front teeth. "Where are you folks heading?" Before Hannah could formulate a vague answer, young William spoke up. "Uncle Elijah doesn't want us 'cause we eat too much." Hannah's cheeks burned with shame. "William," she admonished gently. Dawson's expression darkened momentarily before he schooled it back to neutrality. "Is that so?" He stood slowly, towering over Hannah's petite frame. "Mrs. Crawford, do you have arrangements for the night?" "We'll manage," she replied, though she had no idea how. Dawson studied her for a long moment. "The hotel here charges $2 a night. The boarding house is full with miners. There's a storm brewing from the west." He pointed to dark clouds gathering on the horizon. "I've got a foreman's cabin sitting empty at my ranch." "It's nothing fancy, but it's dry and warm." Hannah hesitated. A proper lady didn't accept such offers from strange men, but she wasn't just a lady anymore, she was a mother with children who needed shelter. "I couldn't impose," she said weakly. "It's no imposition." "My housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, would welcome the company. She's getting on in years and loves children." He smiled again. "Besides, I could use some help around the ranch if you're willing to work." Hannah felt her boy's eyes on her, waiting. She had nowhere else to go, and night was approaching with those threatening clouds. This man seemed decent enough, and the mention of a housekeeper provided a measure of propriety. "Very well, Mr. Baxter. We accept your kind offer, at least for tonight." Dawson nodded as if he'd expected no other answer. "My wagon's just down the street. We should head out before that storm catches us." The ride to the Circle B ranch took nearly an hour, during which the boys peppered Dawson with questions about horses, cattle, and whether there were Indians nearby. Hannah noticed how patient he was with their inquiries, answering each one thoughtfully. "Are you married, Mr. Baxter?" Samuel asked innocently. "Samuel?" Hannah gasped. Dawson chuckled. "It's all right, Mrs. Crawford. No, young man, I'm not married. Never found the time, I suppose." As they crested a hill, the ranch came into view: a sprawling main house, a large barn, bunkhouse, and several smaller cabins scattered around. Cattle dotted the pastures, and horses grazed in a nearby corral. It was larger than Hannah had expected. "This is all yours?" she asked, unable to hide her surprise. "Built it from nothing," Dawson replied with modest pride. "Started with 10 acres and 3 skinny cows 15 years ago. Now I've got 8,000 acres and 500 head of cattle." They pulled up to a neat cabin set a short distance from the main house. It was small but well-maintained, with curtains in the windows and a small porch. "This is the foreman's cabin," Dawson explained. "My last foreman moved on 6 months ago, and I haven't found the right replacement yet. It's yours for as long as you need it." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean: a main room with a stove, table, and chairs, and 2 small bedrooms. Mrs. Abernathy, a stout woman with silver hair and kind eyes, had apparently been informed of their arrival, as a pot of stew bubbled on the stove and fresh bread sat cooling on the table. "You poor dears must be famished," she clucked, already ladling stew into bowls for the boys. "Eat up now. Growing boys need their strength." As the children ate ravenously, Hannah turned to Dawson. "Mr. Baxter, I can't thank you enough, but I need to be clear. We won't be charity cases. I'll work to pay our way." Dawson nodded approvingly. "I expected nothing less, Mrs. Crawford. We can discuss terms tomorrow. For now, get some rest." After he left, Mrs. Abernathy helped Hannah settle the boys into one bedroom with a large bed they could share. The older woman chatted as she worked, filling Hannah in on the ranch. "Mr. Baxter's a good man," she said quietly as they made up Hannah's bed in the second room. "Works harder than any 2 men. This ranch is his life." "He's been very kind," Hannah acknowledged. "Kind, yes, but don't mistake it for weakness. He's fair but expects honest work. This ranch runs like clockwork because of it." Mrs. Abernathy paused. "If you don't mind my asking, what happened to your husband?" Hannah smoothed the quilt with trembling hands. "Pneumonia last winter. Thomas worked at a lumber mill in Pennsylvania. We had a good life, but when he passed, there were debts I didn't know about. The house, everything had to be sold." Mrs. Abernathy patted her hand. "Well, you're here now, and if you ask me, the good Lord has a way of putting us where we need to be, even when we can't see it ourselves." After the older woman left, Hannah sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself a moment to release the tears she'd been holding back for her children's sake. She cried for Thomas, for the rejection they'd faced, for the uncertainty ahead. When her tears were spent, she washed her face, said her prayers, and slipped into the first real bed she'd had in weeks, listening to the storm that had indeed arrived, rattling the windows as rain pounded the roof. The next morning, Hannah woke before dawn, determined to prove her worth. She dressed quickly and found the boys still sleeping soundly. In the main room, she was surprised to find Dawson sitting at the table, a cup of coffee in his hand. "You're up early," he commented, rising when she entered. "I wanted to get started," she replied. "What would you like me to do first?" Dawson smiled. "Coffee." He poured her a cup without waiting for an answer. "Mrs. Abernathy usually handles the cooking for the ranch hands. There are 12 men in the bunkhouse, plus me and the occasional visitor. She could use help with that, the cleaning and the laundry." "It's a lot for a woman her age," Hannah nodded. "I'm a good cook and I don't mind hard work." "There's something else," Dawson said, his expression turning serious. "The school teacher left town 2 months ago to get married. The children here have been without lessons since." "Your oldest boy mentioned you were a teacher before you married." Hannah's eyes widened. "Yes, I taught for 3 years in Philadelphia. Would you consider teaching here? There are 8 children on neighboring ranches plus your own. We converted an old storage building into a schoolhouse, but it sits empty." Hope flickered in Hannah's chest. Teaching had been her passion before marriage. I would be honored, but I'll still help Mrs. Abernathy as needed. Good. I'll pay you $15 a month for teaching, plus room and board here for you and your boys. It was a generous offer, more than she had dared hope for. Thank you, Mr. Baxter. We'll earn our keep. Over the next weeks, Hannah fell into a rhythm at the Circle B. Mornings were spent teaching in the small schoolhouse, where her 8 students, including her own sons, showed varying levels of education but equal enthusiasm. Afternoons found her helping Mrs. Abernathy with cooking and household tasks. The boys thrived in the open spaces of the ranch. James, serious and responsible, shadowed the ranch hands whenever possible, learning to ride and help with simple chores. Samuel, always curious, became fascinated with the blacksmith's work and spent hours watching the massive man shape metal with fire and hammer. William, the baby, followed Dawson like a puppy whenever the rancher was near, peppering him with endless questions that Dawson answered with remarkable patience. Hannah found herself watching Dawson when he didn't notice. She observed how he treated his men with respect, how he worked alongside them rather than just giving orders. She noticed his gentleness with animals, his quiet competence in everything he did. And sometimes, she caught him watching her too, quickly looking away when their eyes met. One evening, after the boys were asleep, Hannah sat on the porch of the cabin enjoying the cool night air. Dawson approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, offering her one of the cups. "Please do," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, looking at the stars that blanketed the sky. "Your boys are settling in well," Dawson commented. Hannah smiled. "They are. I've never seen them so happy. James told me yesterday he wants to be a rancher when he grows up." "He's got a good head on his shoulders. That boy pays attention." Dawson hesitated. "Hannah, Mrs. Crawford, I hope you're finding your place here as well." "I am," she assured him. "Everyone has been kind, and are you happy here?" The question caught her off guard. Was she happy? After months of grief and worry, happiness seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford to consider. Yet here, in this moment, with the peaceful night around them and her children sleeping safely nearby, she realized she was. "Yes," she said softly. "I believe I am," Dawson nodded, seeming pleased. "Good, that's good." As summer turned to fall, Hannah noticed subtle changes in her relationship with Dawson. He began finding reasons to stop by the schoolhouse, bringing books he thought might be useful or supplies the children needed. He invited her and the boys to Sunday dinner at the main house, a tradition that soon became weekly. He sought her opinion on ranch matters, valuing her perspective in a way Thomas never had. The ranch hands noticed too, exchanging knowing glances when Dawson lingered after dinner to talk with Hannah, or when he personally delivered firewood to her cabin rather than sending one of the hands. Mrs. Abernathy took to humming wedding tunes whenever Dawson and Hannah were in the same room, causing Hannah to blush furiously. One crisp October afternoon, Hannah was gathering late wildflowers with William when they encountered Dawson returning from checking fence lines. He dismounted, leading his horse as he joined them in the meadow. "These are for Mama's table," William explained seriously, showing Dawson his small bouquet. "Fine choices," Dawson replied, equally serious. "Your mama deserves pretty things." William nodded enthusiastically. "Mama says you're the kindest man she's ever known." Hannah felt heat rush to her face. William, Dawson's eyes met hers, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Did she now?" "MMHMM. She told Mrs. Abernathy you have the nicest eyes too." William Crawford. Hannah wanted the ground to open up and swallow her. Dawson chuckled, clearly enjoying her discomfort. "Well, I'm flattered, Mrs. Crawford." "Children and their imaginations," Hannah muttered, frantically picking more flowers. "So you don't think I have nice eyes?" Dawson teased, stepping closer. "I never said that your eyes are perfectly adequate, Mr. Baxter." "Adequate?" He clutched his chest in mock pain. "You wound me, madam." Despite her embarrassment, Hannah found herself laughing. "You're impossible." "I prefer persistent," he countered with a wink. That evening, after the boys were asleep, a knock came at the cabin door. Hannah opened it to find Dawson standing there holding a small package. "May I come in for a moment?" he asked. Hannah nodded, suddenly nervous as she led him to the table. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you." He seemed uncharacteristically hesitant as he placed the package on the table. "This is for you." Hannah unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a book of poetry, Tennyson's collected works, bound in soft leather. "Dawson," she breathed, running her fingers over the embossed cover. "It's beautiful. I remembered you mentioning he was your favorite. I had it ordered from Denver. Thank you." "This is so thoughtful." Dawson cleared his throat. "Hannah, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." The seriousness in his tone made her heart flutter nervously. "Yes, I've come to care for you and your boys a great deal," he began, his eyes holding her steadily. "More than I expected. More than might be proper given your situation." Hannah felt her pulse quicken. "Dawson, please, let me finish," he said gently. "I know you're still grieving your husband, and I respect that. I'm not asking for anything right now except permission to court you properly when you're ready. If that time never comes, I'll understand and remain your friend." Hannah was speechless. In the months since Thomas's death, she had closed off the possibility of loving again, focusing solely on survival. But Dawson had awakened feelings she thought were buried with her husband. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "You don't need to say anything tonight," he assured her. "Just think about it." After he left, Hannah sat up late, reading Tennyson by lamplight and examining her heart. She had loved Thomas, but their marriage had been one of practical compatibility rather than passionate devotion. With Dawson, she felt something different, a connection that went beyond gratitude for his kindness. As winter descended on the Colorado countryside, life at the Circle B settled into cozy routine. The school term ended until spring, giving Hannah more time to help around the ranch. She took over most of the cooking from Mrs. Abernathy, whose joints ached in the cold weather. The boys spent hours sledding on the gentle slopes near the cabin, returning with red cheeks and bright eyes for hot chocolate by the fire. Dawson had been true to his word, treating Hannah with respectful friendship while giving her space to sort through her feelings. But she often caught him watching her with longing in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking, and she found herself increasingly drawn to his quiet strength. 2 weeks before Christmas, disaster struck. A fast-moving illness swept through the ranch, a vicious influenza that left even the strongest men bedridden. Hannah worked tirelessly alongside Mrs. Abernathy, nursing the sick and keeping the ranch functioning. Her boys remained mercifully healthy, but Dawson fell ill, his powerful frame rendered weak by fever and coughing. Hannah moved him from the main house to her cabin, setting up a bed in the main room where she could watch over him day and night. She sent the boys to stay with Mrs. Abernathy, fearing they might catch the illness. For 3 days and nights, Hannah barely slept, bathing Dawson's burning forehead with cool cloths, spooning broth between his cracked lips, holding his hand when delirium took him and he called out in fear or pain. On the 3rd night, his fever spiked dangerously high. "Don't leave me," he murmured, clutching her hand as she tried to rise for more cool water. "Please, Sarah, don't go." Hannah froze. "Sarah? Who was Sarah?" She gently extracted her hand. "I'm just getting more water, Dawson. I'll be right back." "I'm sorry," he continued, eyes unfocused. "I should have been there, should have saved you." Hannah returned with the basin, gently bathing his face and neck. "Shh, rest now." "My fault," he mumbled. "All my fault." Hannah held his hand again, stroking it soothingly. "Nothing is your fault, Dawson. Sleep now." Eventually, he drifted into a more peaceful sleep. Hannah sat beside him, wondering who Sarah was and what haunted this good man's dreams. By morning, Dawson's fever had broken. He woke lucid but weak, his eyes finding Hannah asleep in the chair beside his bed, her head resting on her arms at the edge of his mattress. He touched her hair gently, causing her to stir. "You're awake," she said, immediately pressing a hand to his forehead. "The fever's gone." Thanks to you, he replied, his voice raspy. Hannah poured him water, helping him sit up to drink it. How do you feel? Like I was trampled by a herd of buffalo, he admitted with a weak smile. How long was I ill? 3 days. The worst is over now, but you need to rest. Dawson nodded, leaning back against the pillows. After a moment, he asked hesitantly, did I say anything while I was feverish? Hannah busied herself straightening his blankets. You were delirious at times, nothing important. Relief flickered across his face, but Hannah couldn't let it go. You mentioned someone named Sarah, she said quietly. You seemed distressed. Dawson closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were filled with old pain. Sarah was my wife. Hannah couldn't hide her shock. Your wife, but you said you weren't married. I'm not anymore. He sighed deeply. It was 12 years ago. We were married just 6 months when influenza swept through the area. Sarah was pregnant with our first child. They didn't survive. Hannah's heart ached for him. I'm so sorry, Dawson. I was away when she fell ill, delivering cattle to Denver. By the time I returned, she was gone. His voice was hollow with remembered grief. That's why I built this ranch. It was her dream. She grew up on a small ranch in Kansas, always talked about having a place of our own. Hannah took his hand. She would be proud of what you've built. Dawson squeezed her fingers weakly. For years, I just existed, built the ranch, worked from dawn to dusk, never allowing myself to think about a future beyond the next season. Then you arrived with your boys, and suddenly I found myself thinking about tomorrow again. Hannah's eyes filled with tears. I understand. After Thomas died, all I could think about was survival, one day at a time. But here with you, I've started to hope again. Their eyes met, a moment of perfect understanding passing between two people who had known profound loss and found unexpected healing in each other. Hannah, Dawson said softly, when I'm back on my feet, there's something I'd like to ask you, but not now, not like this. She nodded, knowing in her heart what his question would be. Christmas arrived with a blanket of fresh snow and healing throughout the ranch. The illness had claimed no lives, though it had left everyone weaker and grateful for health restored. Hannah and the boys decorated their cabin with pine boughs and paper chains, preparing for their first Christmas without Thomas, but surrounded by their new community. On Christmas Eve, Dawson invited everyone ranch hands, neighboring families, and of course Hannah and her sons to the main house for a celebration. The large living room gleamed with candlelight. A massive pine tree stood decorated in one corner, and tables groaned under the weight of food prepared by Hannah and Mrs. Abernathy. After dinner, gifts were exchanged. The boys received hand-carved wooden animals from the ranch's foreman, knitted scarves from Mrs. Abernathy, and from Dawson their own small saddles. Really? James asked, eyes wide with disbelief. Our own. Every cowboy needs a proper saddle, Dawson replied with a grin. And I've got 3 ponies in the corral that need riding. The boys whooped with joy, hugging Dawson fiercely around the waist. For Hannah, Dawson had a small box, which he presented to her privately as the festivities wound down and the boys played with other children by the fire. Merry Christmas, he said, watching nervously as she opened it. Inside was a delicate silver locket on a fine chain. Hannah opened it to find a tiny painted portrait of her 3 sons on one side, the other side empty. It's beautiful, she whispered. The other side is for whatever future holds, Dawson explained. I hoped. Hannah touched his cheek gently. It's perfect, thank you. As guests began departing and the boys dozed by the fire, Dawson took Hannah's hand. Would you walk with me a moment? He led her to the porch where the night was clear and cold, stars brilliant against the black sky. Fresh snow sparkled in the moonlight, the world hushed and beautiful. I've been waiting to get my strength back, Dawson began, his breath visible in the cold air. Wanted to do this properly. Hannah's heart quickened as he took both her hands in his. Hannah Crawford, when you arrived in Willow Creek last summer, I knew you were special. You were tired and afraid, but so brave for your boys. I admired you from that first moment. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. These past months, watching you build a new life here, seeing your strength and kindness, I've fallen completely in love with you." Hannah's eyes filled with tears as Dawson continued. "I know it hasn't been long since you lost Thomas, and if you need more time, I understand. But I want you to know that I love your boys as if they were my own. I want to be a father to them, a husband to you. I want us to be a family." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a simple gold band. "This was my mother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it as my wife." Hannah looked at the man before her, this strong, kind man who had opened his home and heart to her family when they had nowhere else to go. She thought of Thomas, knowing he would want her and the boys to be happy, to be loved. "When I came here," she said softly, "I was broken, lost. You gave us shelter, yes, but more than that, you gave us hope." She touched his face tenderly. "I love you, Dawson Baxter. I would be proud to be your wife." His face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Dawson pulled her gently into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and protection. When they finally parted, Hannah rested her head against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. "When should we tell the boys?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning. It would be a fine Christmas gift, don't you think?" Hannah nodded, imagining their excitement. "They already love you so much." Dawson held her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "From the moment you arrived, exhausted and afraid, all I wanted was for you to feel safe. I remember telling you, you're home now. I meant it then, but I didn't know how much I needed you to make this place truly feel like home to me." They were married on New Year's Day, 1880, in the ranch's main house, with Hannah's sons standing proudly beside them and the entire community in attendance. Hannah wore a new blue dress that Mrs. Abernathy had helped her make, and carried winter evergreens tied with white ribbon. James, Samuel, and William each solemnly presented their mother and new father with rings they had helped the blacksmith fashion from horseshoe nails crude, but heartfelt symbols of their new family bond. Spring brought new life to the ranch calves in the pastures, foals in the corral, and the news that Hannah was expecting a child in the fall. The boys were ecstatic at the prospect of a new brother or sister, and Dawson walked around with a permanent smile that his ranch hands mercilessly teased him about. One warm evening in May, Hannah sat on the porch of the main house, their house now, watching her sons play with the ranch dogs in the yard. Dawson joined her, settling into the chair beside hers and taking her hand. "Happy?" he asked, a question he still posed regularly, as if amazed by his good fortune. "Completely," she assured him, placing their joined hands over her still flat stomach. "I never imagined finding this kind of happiness again." "Nor I," he admitted. "For years I thought my heart died with Sarah." "Then you arrived and proved me wrong." Hannah leaned against his shoulder, watching the sunset paint the Colorado sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. "God works in mysterious ways. If Thomas's brother had welcomed us as we expected, we never would have met." "Then I owe that man a debt of gratitude," Dawson said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "His rejection led you home to me." Hannah smiled, thinking of how far they had come from that desperate day in Willow Creek. She had arrived a widow with 3 hungry sons and nowhere to turn. Now she was a wife, a mother, a teacher, and a vital part of this thriving ranch and community. "You're home now," Dawson had told her that first day, and how right he had been. Not just a physical home of walls and roof, but the deeper home of belonging, of purpose, of love. Here, surrounded by the beauty of the Wild West and the love of a good man, Hannah Crawford Baxter had found not just shelter, but the promise of joy for all the days to come.